ever get that feeling? Like you're right there about to give up on something,
Yeah.
but then something makes you stick with it.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what we're diving into today, that grit that turns almost failures into those legendary successes.
I like it.
Think about it. 1997, Apple's one bad product launch away from basically disappearing, and then boom, Steve Jobs is back.
Right. Trying to save his own creation.
Exactly. You sent over this article, commemorating 10 years since he died, and it really got me thinking, what made him such a force, even outside of just like the tech world?
Yeah.
And the author of this piece, they make this argument that it wasn't just that Jobs was right. It was this like sheer persistence, this unwavering commitment to an idea, even when everyone else is saying, no way.
And that's what's so fascinating, right? The author actually lays out this whole framework for success. Like, yeah, you got to make good calls, obviously.
Right.
You got to make sure your wins are bigger than your losses. But it's that third element, that persistence, that they argue is essential. Without that, the rest doesn't matter as much.
It's like that old saying, ideas are cheap, execution is everything. But this takes it to another level, especially with some of those decisions that seemed insane at the time.
Oh, tell me about it.
No keyboard on the iPhone. Paying for songs online individually. Could you imagine trying to pitch that back in the day?
Honestly. And here's the thing. It's not like Jobs was the only one, with those ideas floating around. But everyone else, they hit that wall of impossible and stopped. He just didn't.
Well, he had a knack for making the impossible happen, that's for sure.
It's true. And the article actually talks about this almost crazy anecdote about the original Mac.
Oh, yeah.
Jobs was insistent on getting the ROM size down to something the engineers swore was impossible.
No way. Like literally impossible.
They told him straight up, can't be done. But he wouldn't let it go.
So what happened? They figure it out.
And that's the point the article really drives home. It was that almost unreasonable persistence, facing down doubt head on, that took these industry-shifting ideas from just like pipe dreams to the tech landscape we know now.
Which makes you wonder, though, how'd he actually do it? It's easy for us to sit here and be like, oh, just be persistent. But to actually do that, to push through when everyone, maybe even yourself, is telling you it's impossible.
Yeah, right. It's another thing to put it into practice.
It takes a different kind of something.
And that's where this article gets really interesting. It goes into this side of leadership you don't always hear about, teamwork.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in that, that lone genius narrative. We put figures like Jobs on a pedestal.
Right, right.
But this article, it really drives home the point that even someone as visionary as Jobs, they don't exist in a vacuum.
It takes a village.
It does. He was surrounded by and relied on this incredibly talented team.
It's like that old saying, talent wins games, but teamwork wins championships.
Exactly. And the article, it does touch on this too, like working with someone like that, with that level of intense focus.
Had to have been interesting, to say the least.
Oh, for sure. The article doesn't shy away from, Jobs' reputation for being really demanding, but there's this acknowledgement that he kind of had this knack for pushing people beyond what they thought possible.
So it's less about being like the nice guy and more about pushing for excellence.
It's more about setting the bar incredibly high, challenging everyone around him, the engineers, designers, even the marketing team, to reach for things they didn't even think they were capable of.
And the results, they kind of speak for themselves, but that makes you wonder, though, is that kind of intensity sustainable long-term?
It's a good question.
Because that kind of relentless drive, could it backfire sometimes?
And that's where the author brings up this really interesting concept, survivorship bias.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We tend to zero in on those success stories, the times when that persistence, it totally paid off, right?
Right, big time.
But what about all the times it didn't? What about all those brilliant people who poured their heart and soul into something?
Yeah, and just went nowhere.
Exactly. We forget about all those ideas, all those projects that just, crashed and burned.
It's like we only see the tip of the iceberg.
That's a great way to put it. We're so focused on those towering successes, but below the surface, all those ideas, all that effort, that just didn't make it. And Jobs, for all his triumphs, he wasn't immune to that either.
So it's not just about willpower, then?
It's more nuanced than that.
There's this, a balance between believing in your vision and having the awareness to know when to maybe change course.
100%. Persistence without good judgment. It's like driving a car with gas pedal glued down, but no steering wheel.
Okay, that's a terrifying visual.
Right. You might get somewhere fast, but you're just as likely to crash and burn. And that's what the article emphasizes. You need both.
Okay, so How do we do that then? How do we find that balance, that sweet spot between unwavering belief and being, smart enough to admit when we might be wrong?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's a real balancing act, You need that belief, that unwavering vision to even get started.
Totally. But then it's about having the awareness to know when to adapt, to stay balanced as you move forward.
Right, like how you know when to hold them and when to fold them.
And that's where that self-awareness, it's so crucial. The article really emphasizes that. To use persistence the right way, you have to be brutally honest with yourself.
I can see that.
About your strengths, yeah. But also your weaknesses, those blind spots we all have.
Oh, yeah, we've all got them. It's so easy to get so attached to an idea, you miss those, glaring flaws.
It's true.
It's like that saying, can't see the forest for the trees. But if you can make that space, for honest feedback, even criticism, that's where the growth happens.
That's how persistence goes from just stubbornness to something way more powerful.
Right. It's not just about refusing to quit. It's about being open to learning, to changing direction, even scrapping the whole thing if you have to.
Exactly.
Which actually brings us back to Jobs, doesn't it? Because for all that persistence, he wasn't afraid to change his mind.
Right.
To admit when something wasn't working. So it's not about blindly pushing forward. It's more like finding that middle ground.
Yeah.
Where you have that unwavering belief, but also the humility to make a change. If you need to.
100%. And it reminded me, there's this quote in the article, something about persistence being the engine, but good judgment being the steering wheel.
Ooh, I like that.
You need both to really get to where you're going.
It really drives home the point we've been talking about. It's not enough to just have a vision. You've got to be ready to deal with everything that comes with it.
It's almost like a video game. The vision is just you picking your character, right? Then you've got obstacles, setbacks, even total wipeouts.
And that's life, isn't it? It's all about how we handle those challenges.
It is. And this actually leads to a really interesting question the article asks. Would you rather be right or would you rather be successful?
Ooh, that's a good one. Because sometimes being successful means letting go of that need to be right.
Totally. And realizing that the most successful people, often, they're the ones who can admit when they don't have the answers.
Right. It's about having people around you who can help, fill in those gaps, not being afraid to ask for help.
And always being open to learning something new.
As we're wrapping up here, thinking about Steve Jobs and this whole idea of persistence, it really hits me that this isn't just about one guy or even just about tech.
Bigger than that.
It's about this fundamental human thing, this drive to create, to build something new, to, make your mark on the world.
Leave your dent in the universe.
Yes. Exactly. And to do that, we need that persistence, but not just any kind, like we've been saying. It's got to be the kind that's fueled by passion, by a willingness to learn and adapt.
And maybe even more importantly, the courage to stick with it, even when it gets really, really tough.
So well said. And it makes you think, what's that one thing you've been putting off? That dream that felt a little too big, a little too impossible?
We all have those.
What would it take to bring even a little bit of that, Steve Jobs energy to it, to your own life?
Maybe it's time to dust those dreams off. Revisit those ideas you thought were too big, too impossible.
Because, hey, as we've learned today, impossible has a way of, becoming possible with a bit of grit, a lot of determination, and maybe just a touch of that Steve Jobs spirit.
Couldn't agree more.
That's fantastic. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us, everyone. And until next time, stay curious, stay persistent, and whatever you do,
don't be afraid to dream big.
Beautifully put. See you next time.